and that's how we pick up those acid scheme. And then of course, there's laser-based methods like laser-induced breakdown spectroscopy, which is an analytical method that people can use in the lab. Like the TRM cracking, which you can say is a sensors that sends the electrical cables, and then the signal receiver, or I would say data acquisition box. It can be there's no electrical signal kilometers or distance, and you can use different experiencing some temperature fluctuations. It contracts or it expands, and it changes the material density, and that changes the acoustic wave velocity, and that will affect the sensitivity of the sensor. So in a community, we call it cross sensitivity from temperature. Fiber cable as detecting temperature. This is why some of the compensation algorithms are important to some efficient vacuum drying, and there's some moisture entrapped within the cavity of this fuel cladding, fuel rod, and eventually we create corrosion, and is
this an application you're using here?
In the application you're using here, in the comprehensive as possible. So we try to do that, comprehensive as possible. So we try to do the importance of physics-based modeling. The importance of physics-based modeling and simulation is that classify different anomalies. Experimental real-world data that we have. That's one of the techniques in machine learning called data augmentation. You augment the data with the real-world data, ingesting the model, train more accurately to predict those. Or if you felt that, train more accurately to predict those. Or if you felt that,
it's clear. At a commercial scale, at least at a small demonstration scale, we're going to see that. So, all of our experience primarily right now, the challenges we're dealing with is legacy light water reactor fuel, which is relatively homogeneous across the country. But start then trying to figure out what are the novel waste storage solutions we have. Maybe you could touch on that, John, if you wanted to start.
Some of these new things. The fact is that some people are doing them. Whether they will be deployed for power reactors at this point. I heard vaporware a few times in an earlier panel. But either way, they're going to be have been decommissioned over the decades. So I heard manager at DOE. No longer do we just have big reactors. Now you can get a tall, a grande, or a venti. And so we actually and these are not that different than and then you have these small modular reactors, which are the grande, and then you have your AP1000 or whatever, your large reactors. And so there's scaling issues, but it's worse on my body or something, I don't know. But the other thing you have to recognize about a lot of these advanced reactor designs, when I checked, the last time I really looked at this, there were more than 80 And so, like, as somebody who sort of to start, so we have report. So we tried what we inherit, whether it's you know, molten fluoride salt or tennis ball from pipes that were corroded by chlorine or fluorine composite or a cermet. And there was 2 national labs and 4 universities. A week or 2 ago, they, because you're going to design the chemical processing, which, you know, one of the things that TerraPower was thinking when they got out of this chloride fast reactor business was that they couldn't figure out the corrosion problem. But you know, there's definitely going to be a lot of new issues that we have some idea what they are, but thinking of if you're going to deploy any of these technologies, think about the end result of, you know, where you're going to put it. You know, they didn't have enough of that because of the war. And so now things are corroding and they were never designed to last that long. So kind of similar situation here. I didn't know a lot about San Onofre before I came, but when I was at Pacific Northwest National Lab, the Fukushima Daiichi accident happened.
Technical solutions and technical issues, but there's a lot of changes going on at the NRC, one of which is a dramatic rethinking of radiation protection standards. So, you know, all of these issues inherently deal with hazardous materials that have a degree of monitoring. We've talked about monitoring. And Fred, I wonder if you could just briefly touch on this idea of what's happening, or the pens watching something with boxes and pens.
It's a great question. The NRC, a lot of regulations that I think are really important. The number one of which is what's called the LARA, which you mentioned is, say there's a dose limit of 0.05 sieverts or 5 rem to a worker during a year. There's others, but I'll talk about that. But in addition to that, you have to keep doses below 5, but then you have to keep them as low as reasonably achievable amongst people. It's that, in my opinion, that has kept cost billions of dollars, and so they want to get rid of it. It turns out the proposals are not nearly as traumatic as I thought they might. Get rid of a LARA. I think a LARA is really, really important, but it's going to be replaced with something, and I don't know. A dose of 1 negligible within the risk. What's acceptable for any item. It's very small, but there's a difference. So without a LARA, I don't know what constrains people from letting workers get higher doses. So that's what constrains me. But there are some good changes. On the medical side, our doctors get a lot of dose. Interventional cardiologists get very high doses. It's really hard for us to stay on top of it. And you don't want to tell the cardiologist, you can't do any more procedures this year that are saving lives because we think your dose is too high. And one of the changes in the new rule,
Who are engaged in these issues will comment and get involved in that process. I think we're ready to take questions from the audience. Where's that? Yeah, go. And you would say your name and
I think there are technologies that could work. You know, one that I reviewed some SBIR proposals a number of years ago. There's some plasma spray technologies, some corrosion is the #1 problem. U.S. Navy. And so there are these kinds of industrial repair techniques that I think would work. As I don't know the specific condition of these canisters, but I do believe that is the case.
anybody else?
Yeah.
emergency maintenance.
Yeah.
Fred, did you want?
It's not like
Go for it. You have a comment? No? Okay. Okay, yeah, in the back.
Yeah, I'm just curious, on-site at San Onofre,
On-site at San Onofre, what's available to mitigate?
The current monitoring situation is at San Onofre, but I think that the technology, I don't know what the current contract is for monitoring the site.
There is
so-
no monitoring inside the canisters at San Onofre, zero.
You know, and I mean, there's not a specific solution currently, and it's one of the challenges with the site is that, you know, when we talk about you have to have an ability to do that, those facilities don't currently exist. I think that was kind of the point of the question, is that those are challenges that will, in principle, be addressed if they arise, and that's not the optimal approach to how we do this, and I think that's something we've seen too often. You know, we've talked about this, notion that we've gone into this industry without
troubling things here. I've heard we're going to go ahead with small nuclear reactors, modular nuclear reactors, no matter what, risk. I'm not hearing, you spoke about Finland example. It's for atomic. It has seismically low risk. I wondered if you could comment a little bit more on the long-term solution, this idea of mining nuclear, a little bit kind of discussed. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts.
Well, let me first respond to your first point. I'm saying that there's already companies that are, on places like Oak Ridge and Idaho, which are building test reactors. So those test reactors are going to be waste from them. So somebody's going to have to deal with that. Whether they're sited in willing communities is a different question. But I just wanted to clarify that I'm talking about one-off kind of test reactors that many small companies are working on right now.
But and I think if I could add to that too, I think the point is there's probably not enough foresight for these companies to think about what will their storage needs be, and it's simply something we don't demand enough of. And I think that is compounding the problem, certainly.
Yeah. Well, when I talked about 1,000 years, it's because I don't think with any confidence we could say what's going to happen in 1,000,000 years. I think we should bury the waste, and maybe the Tower Mine in northern Minnesota, where it's old, stable rock, is the way to go. With the best available technology we have now, we do it the best we can, and not hold us to some numerical safety. So that's what I was trying to say. This stopping a project because what's going to happen in 1,000,000 years, as long as we're using the best available technology to get rid of it, to bury it. I don't know if it's pie in the sky to mine spent nuclear fuel. I know they already talk when they recycle fuel, which a lot of our other advantages to that you can separate out the cesium, strontium, and some of the shorter-lived waste that could be stored in a less robust repository, because in 300 or 500 years, that will be pretty much gone. And you have a smaller volume of the actinides, of the uraniums and plutoniums. So then you have a smaller volume. This in a way, and get some usable material out and make your disposal needs a little easier. And some other countries are already kind of doing that. So
And I think we are.
So sorry.
At the end of our time. As interesting as the discussion was, all of us will be here. So if you have any questions, please come up and ask. And again, I want to thank everybody here on the panel for their interesting insights on what are complicated technical issues and also significant public policy challenges. So thank you.
District, Congressman Scott Peters, representing California's 50th District, Tim Kowalczyk, Director of Research at the Utah Office of Energy Development, and Carmen Valdez, Senior Policy Associate at HEAL Utah. Moderating is Haley Smith of the Los Angeles Times. Please welcome our panel.
District, sits on the House Appropriations Committee, and founded and co-chairs the Representative Scott sits on the House Energy and Commerce Committee and the House Budget Committee at Healy, Utah. I'm Haley Smith. I'm an environment reporter with the Los Angeles Times, energy transition, and I recently rewatched Chernobyl on HBO Max, so I feel like we're totally all on the same planet. Years thinking about and working on this issue of nuclear waste, and we've got a lot to talk about, so I'm just going to jump right in. I wanted to start today by talking about this idea of the nuclear energy that would essentially establish federally supported sites in several states that could handle several aspects of the nuclear life cycle. So that would include fuel fabrication, power generation, potentially The Energy Department says 26 states have volunteered to participate in this program. So far, they have announced 5, which are Utah, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Idaho, and why this idea might be attractive to states like Utah. And would you be comfortable with these campuses not only
is interesting, right? It's also quick, it's also new, that's been said already, but for how new? The DOE put this on is essentially an evolution of that. It is inclusive of a repository to start there. Flat conceives of reprocessing, enabling portable disposal. That is new still for even were we to be awarded today. I don't want to upsell on how quickly this is happening. As for why, what may have been said is that the United States needs more energy. It seems to be the case. We've been coasting for a while. Efficiency is about at its relative limits. The easy fruit has been obtained. So we need more. Part of that solution, at least in Utah's perspective, we are all of the above, we are any of the above. We believe pick the right resource when it makes the most sense. One of those options, potentially for the United States, for Utah, should be nuclear. Nuclear has special considerations. It also, the United States has a weak supply chain. We don't enrich enough, we don't convert enough, particularly if we're going to grow our fleet with new modules, small. If that's the direction the nation should go, we do need firm federal policy on that, which representatives act on all the time. Thank you so much for your contributions. The campus is a concept of that. It is repository plus let's look towards the nuclear future. What do you need? It is that enrichment, it is that conversion, it is that fuel fabrication. It is part research, it is part commercial, it is part federal responsibility. Tremendous opportunity, certainly, but it is up to the people. It is up to the people of the state, of the nation to take on this national risk, this national challenge. So that call was put out, claims it's submitted, we put forward, we think the best proposal in the nation. It seems to be, we've heard very positive things at least. And as has been conceived of, it certainly seems to be that there might be an east-west hub on the side of this thing. So as far as the West is concerned with the nuclear campus, Utah has to have the most competitive proposal. It's a good job opportunity. It ties you into a national security issue, national relevancy. If you solve reprocessing and mining becomes real, to be determined. Global supply chain for critical minerals, for medical isotopes, for things that we want in our society. I don't think anyone wants medical diagnostics to go away. We need to keep growing. There's tremendous demand to keep growing, and that's probably enough of an intro.
Congressman, you, Congressman Levin, have been broadly supportive of this idea, but I'm curious, maybe both of you can answer this. The White House has promoted this as a way to help revive the nuclear industry in the United States, and I just wonder if we are putting the cart before the horse a little bit here. If we're reviving an industry when we don't yet have a permanent federal fuel repository, or I'm sorry, waste repository, kind of gets us into a little bit of a pickle, right? Should Congress solve the back end of the fuel cycle first before putting more money and investments into the front end?
Yes. So I was one of, I think, around 35 or 40 members of Congress that said explicitly, hold your horses here with the future of the nuclear industry. We have to fix the back end of the fuel cycle. And privately, the nuclear industry knows this. And what I have tried to do in my 8 years in Congress is to not be perceived as pro-nuclear or anti-nuclear in the room at the table when discussions are held around how we're going to solve the spent nuclear fuel challenge. Because the issue that we have down the freeway, I live about 10 minutes away from San Onofre, that is the symptom of a far greater problem. And the problem is we've got no national solution for the nation's spent nuclear fuel. We haven't for a very long time. I am very fortunate to work in Congress with great partners like my friend Scott towards hopefully a better future where we've actually figured this out. And I like what the gentleman said where the Nuclear Life Cycle Innovation Campuses, it's a rebrand of something that we've been doing for some time. The consent-based siting initiative is something that we funded, something that we supported, and in some, the definition of insanity is doing it in 0 canisters of fuel moved. And so, how do we avoid that same mistake? We get the consent, the buy-in, the cooperation of one or more states or regional entities. And so, what the Trump administration has done. If you were here, you would nuclear fuel challenges, and I am personally committed to spend every single day for as long as I have the opportunity in Congress to do just that, whether it's through funding or through policy or whatever else needs to happen.
False battle right now between Republicans and Democrats over natural gas versus renewables. The world is moving toward renewables. I don't think we have to worry. I think that everyone recognizes that nuclear could be a really solid either. I think we have to pursue regaining the capability to do nuclear power now. I think by the way, fission and fusion, not to need to be overly ambitious, but I think we have to do all that investing and learning now. I think these efforts these days with the Trump administration. But I certainly agree we have to solve the spent nuclear fuel problem. I came in before the plant was decommissioned. It leaves a pretty big hole in Southern California's renewable power portfolio. And I think we have to recognize that that's a real possibility for us going forward. We have to I'm going to support it, but I am skeptical of it. Matches with, there's sort of a Venn diagram of consenting places where the geography is appropriate for disposal. Are pretty obvious political reasons. There's 7 states you have to win to become president of the United States. One of them is Nevada, and Nevada doesn't want this. I wonder if, hypothetically, if the geological conditions that exist at Yucca Mountain, 1,000 feet above the water table, 1,000 feet. So I'm just a little wary of making sure that we not just attend to the consent side of it, but also the geological. One more flight. Communities are going to be Malibu or Newport Beach. I think we're going to be into an environmental justice question when we need that consent. So, look, I'm not disagreeing with it. At the Energy Summit, I think that's appropriate. But I think we also have to recognize that if it doesn't, we may have to change course again. We may have to make some hard conversations.
I would love to hear your opinion on this campus idea. Is there what sort of policy would you have to be, either state or federal? Would you have to see in order to be convinced?
Yeah, and thank you, Congressman. Perfect transition.
Set that up for you.
Thank you. You're a real one. Healy, Utah, the health for 26 years based around environmental justice and exposures to radioactive toxic threats. And Now it includes air quality and then just equitable energy transition. So all related, born and raised. So the repercussions, as Tina alluded to in her keynote, what have suffered through cancers, and with the recent expansion of RECA, we've seen more people, including my own grandma, be eligible for this. And so that leads to that federal side. We do need a lot of work for protections and awareness. And back when we were testing weapons, everyone was told it was safe, it was safe, it was safe, don't worry. Now people are aware. We have access to our phones, our little computers all the time. So it'd be nice to hear from the federal side, you know, there are risks, and here are ways that you can protect yourself, and guarantees for community protection, including emergency preparedness, including education. For the general public, that's not just it's safe, it's there are risks associated, here are some ways to limit that. Because what we've seen is there are historical communities that have already been impacted by these community or by this industry. And what could happen is we're going to accumulate reviving the uranium industry, harming all of these communities who had grandparents and parents who were harmed from working in the uranium industry. We've learned better. We don't drink water from inside a uranium mine, just in case anyone had any concerns about that. Manifest. So the federal side, the NRC changes, the nuclear regulatory changes was mentioned. There are many different NEPA, with the radiation regulation changes, with shipping, with transporting, as well as importing low-level radioactive waste from Canada to be shipped across the nation to be dumped at the Clyde facility. And so these are all things that the community, we're talking about consent-based. I know these harms are coming out, so we're going out saying here's ways to protect yourself, here's ways you can go find access to medical care, here's a program you can apply for because you meet the qualifications as a downwinder. And people don't know about these things. All of you that are here with us, how many of you can think of a few people in your neighborhoods that you could go and talk to them, and what that legacy comes with radioactive harm? Systemically been low-income, underserved, rural, indigenous populations that have been harmed the most. And we haven't, there is no one solution, but I think coming back and holding industry and government accountable, maybe asking industry those millions of dollars it can make, maybe toss back into communities versus just building one gym or something like that, or maybe healthcare access for all workers for their lifetime and their families. It is a serious conversation because this justice is an intergenerational effect, and it is catastrophic when things go wrong, as a lot of people have mentioned here. So, of all of this, and that too is radioactive and contaminated, and harms communities and has had harmed communities. So when it comes to environmental justice, I don't see many of the people that would live near mines here in this room today. And that's something to think about. I've been to the mill, I've been to these sites, I ride past on the fun bus to Wendover to the Clyde facility. Moving forward.
When it was happening, but then immediately went out and talked to essentially every county. Feasibility, and said, okay, makes sense. Then we continued that engagement essentially every single week, every single day. We've already been doing a public education campaign, essentially getting out there, hearing what people's concerns are, and just answering questions. County's Derby, because that's what they wanted us to do. With the community engagement piece has been central to our entire strategy, and we're giving the communities options and funding. We talk to the community every couple of weeks. We have talked to the city. We will be going out into the community and listening to them. At the end of the day, our one of the stronger proposals. That's part of the core of it. With what we think is reasonably suitable geology, pending. We're going to do this characterization, right? And has been. Do you understand the assignment? And then have you actually engaged your communities? So for us as central, who decides at the end of the day? Some of that's federal. There will be congressional changes that they happen to unlock this stuff. I think that. But there will need to be significant changes within the federal parties, or not changes, but significant efforts from.
Do you still think that the federal government is the best entity or body to be handling this issue? I mean, as you've mentioned, it's been 40 years since Yucca Mountain was proposed. It's still sitting empty. I wonder if we need to think about this differently. Should this maybe
give it to Elon Musk?
Yeah, right. He'll shoot it into space, no problem. Yeah, I mean, the government, as we know, moves at the pace of government. So, is the federal government still the best entity?
Which is extremely political, and create a new nuclear waste administration. That would be, we originally thought and then of course the independence of the Fed has now been called into question. So McFarland and Lake Barrett, for those that have met them, and they actually recommend a similar entity in the nuclear industry itself. That raises some, I'm a little skeptical of that, I will just say. Track record is not you know, what we've been doing. I don't think the DOE is well equipped. I'm good friends with Jennifer Granholm. I thought she was great as an energy secretary. In reality, she's only there for a handful of years, and the next person comes in, they're only there for a handful of years. Their thing either, even when we had extremely thoughtful people like Greg Yasko, who's like in the back row somewhere, our former chairman of the NRC is here somewhere. Not all of these sites have spent the Samsung sea levels. We've got an extremely important military base across the freeway, and we've got all this spent fuel sitting right there, and that's an untenable situation. So my care, which will be 17 years.
Too late for me. So I think it has to be the federal government, and because for a few reasons, it is responsible for its own waste, raises the same geological issues I was responsible for its own waste, raises the same geological issues I was talking about before. I mean, I think there. We're so many places with the federal government right now. What the facts are. So much more energy being large enough to help of not money out there that's going to support that risk and work better. You voters.
Of prioritization, you have introduced legislation that would establish a system for prioritizing which sites get their waste removed first. If and when we have, you know, who gets to go first, let's really do consent-based and incentive-based, aka ways to put it.
I don't think those two ideas are mutually exclusive. So I think when the time comes for us to unpack the nuclear waste that I reviewed yesterday as we were looking at the agenda for today, you know, my thought is, in our current language, is national security and seismic concerns. Those are two things that I think there's some other site in Washington, D.C. You know, my belief on this is, of all the things that I've been working on, this has been pretty bipartisan. Office back in 2020, and Rodney Davis, including brought up transportation, and anything's ever going to be fully foolproof, but a much safer way to transport a commercial canister from point. Those of you who are trying to get a canister from Virginia to Idaho. And if it goes
nuclear power plant up in San Luis Obispo. Of course, it's very impressive. It did not feel to me like a nuclear power plant that looks like it's going to be shutting down anytime soon. And in fact, there's a growing push for renewing or extending its life once again to 2045. I feel like there's been a shift in in the public perception of nuclear energy in recent years. And I think some of this has to do with growing awareness of climate change and some prominent as either a climate bridge or a climate solution. I'm curious, maybe Carmen, if you want to start with this one, how do you think about nuclear in that context? You know, California's got
brought up a lot, and you know, going to acknowledge the carbon-free benefits that come from producing the energy, spinning the turbines from steam, do work for our decarbonization. What is problematic, and those are for existing plants, right? But as it's been mentioned, a lot of the new proposed plants and small modular reactors and microreactors and everything like that are still 5, 10, 15 years out. Some of those fuels, we were to throw everything on board and or hopefully invested into floodings and droughts and fires. So when it comes to new nuclear at this point that are still in testing phases or still paper reactors, theoretical, being proposed to the nuclear reactor, they're not going to address the climate change issues that are happening today. And so we need to be looking at all of the above energy and recognizing energy consumption and maybe decreasing energy consumption or finding alternatives, as well as decentralized, right? That it can be plugged in and we're seeing climate change right now, today. Maybe not in San Diego where it stays at crisp 70 degrees all year round. But this is something that we're already dealing with, and if we're not looking at all of the energy options in an equitable way, and then we may not have enough power because climate change will create what we need it to be because it's not.
I think Carmen's almost made the argument, boy, the nuclear that we have in theory under the ground, I think we would really be helpful. We're looking for ways to, first of all, I think coal in the United States is generally become uncompetitive because essentially of fracking. We're not really building new coal unless it's subsidized by the Trump administration, which of course is another thing. And you know, throughout the world, I think of the power that was built last year, over 90% of it was renewable. And so the market is self-sufficient. And I think all these things have to happen in parallel. We just have to wait for them. So a lot of these things will go away. We should be putting money on all these bets. And I think he's not on for the next 10 years. But I think one reflection, Haley, of what you said, that we're thinking about things differently, is I don't think there's a serious conversation about shutting down Diablo Canyon as there was before. I think if they can re-up that, they will. I visited Western Michigan. The community is very enthusiastic about the jobs associated with opening the new for their data center. And by the way, the restriction there, just so you know, they can't get a connection to the grid until 2034. So really, transmission will be waiting for advances in new generation. In parallel, I think the reason to if we could see new nuclear technologies potentially generate less waste, we could see that in 10 years. That'd be worth getting started on now.
I think Scott raises some very good generation in the United States. Around 40%, 45% is from our. I want to hit today's greenhouse gas goals. Now, our friend Mark Jacobson, who I know has spoken to Samuel Arms before, will tell you that you through wind, water, and solar. But that presupposes that you have an administration that isn't kneecapping two of those three to been paying to build stuff. In the case of some of these wind projects, the Trump administration has been paying to shut these projects down. And at at the same time, to Scott's point, use it for good things. The Trump administration is using it to the tune of $700 million to keep people that we keep.
I have so many more questions for you guys, but it sounds. I have so many more questions for you guys, but it sounds like the audience is excited to weigh in.
Got a spirited audience.
I know. Let me check the time. Let's see. Okay, let me ask one more, last one, and then we'll turn it over to them. Is that okay? My understanding is that Yucca Mountain's capacity, storage capacity, is 70,000 metric tons. The United States has already existing 9,000 metric tons of nuclear waste. So Yucca Mountain, even if it opened tomorrow, it's not going to fix this problem. And if we keep Yucca Mountain, even if it opened tomorrow, it's not going to fix this problem. And if we keep expanding this industry at the rate that we're talking about and thinking about, I mean, we might need
only thing. And also new technologies that might, the nuclear technologies that might generate less waste. So I would just say, I think those are two things that on the Energy Subcommittee we are hoping to see out of the next generation of nuclear. So just to challenge the number.
We process currently in the U.S.
Right, recycled materials, which is not being allowed now. I think that's something we should think about as well. If we could recycle what's sitting in San Onofre, given concerns, I think that would be at least.
And we're humans, like I am so excited for the technology and advancements and ideas that people come up with, and I want to solve this issue in a reprocessing, because right, we are all told, we'll recycle, we'll make everything great, and it's going to be great. What we're seeing though is that countries like France and England and different places, and the UK and places like that, have decommissioned or slowed that's required. We could get 100% recycling. That is an incredible feat for humans to conquer. But what we're seeing right now is that's not feasible. We're not seeing that. And then additionally, those different reprocessing materials create a reactor to take that type of reprocessed waste as a fuel. And as a reprocessed fuel in order to use, and so then it's sitting waiting to be used. Hopeful that we can get to that point. It's waste that needs to be dealt with. So if any engineers, scientists, anyone out there, if you can find that, please do. I think we're all needing that. But at this point, it hasn't been figured out because it hasn't existed long enough. So the ask is please continue doing this research, finding those wastes to be dealt with. That can be.
The National Sierra Club nuclear waste guidance document. I'll share the whole thing with you, but a couple of key points. One is interim become permanent. Do is it separates the nuclear waste into components including radioactive plutonium, which can be used by any individual to begin the campus this idea. I think there's loads of good things you could do, but reprocessing should not be quicker.
Federal policy, and candidly, the federal government is not going to do that. Private industry needs to actually prove out the engineering, the facilities, the factories. A really big repository. Are you going to expand it every 10 years, every 20 years? Are you going to build 30 more of them? You need a better solution. The ones to lead on this. We will have to see what happens.
Thank you. A couple between 20,000 get the sites. Has there been monitoring to the Onofre? I think was shut down a ranch. I think toxic, children's health,
Women. That's the bill that I just introduced with Mike Waller from New York. And I'm open to any ideas and suggestions and everything. But we do need your input, and I appreciate your comments very much.
We should understand what law enforcement we bring to it. On data centers, I think yes, he's basically what the default will be natural gas turbines for that. It's hard to get it's hard to get, you should demand that should be a closed loop and you're not taking water away from folks. Closed loop, in other words, use the same water over and over again. Light, which can be mitigated, and noise, which is difficult with proximity. But those are the things I think that we ought to be concerned about, and we ought to make sure that
this extraordinarily expensive scam, which a lot of people, some highly intelligent lobbyists and others rather nefarious and shady people around Trump. Sessions just kind of staring us in the face. Why aren't you guys pushing?
is now the leading producer of wind, second only to China, as much as like Arizona to places like Detroit.
Wholeheartedly committed to from day one. I was on. We had Speaker Pelosi, who I would say was the most effective speaker in the history of the House of Representatives. Price of electricity, San Diego Gas and Electric is one of the highest anywhere in the continental United States. If we want to lower the price of gasoline, energy is the silver bullet.
Legislation, reprocessing, new technologies, when realistically can we expect San Onofre's nuclear waste to be, gone? 10 years, gone. 10 years, 50 years, what?
A lot of stuff that needs to happen. This is a monumental task. A lot of stuff that needs to happen. This is a but I'm hopeful that we are making very good strides.
In collaboration with King Ho, who is here, opportunity to come up and speak about it.